Hi, I'm Katie Walton from Make Real Progress, and I am bringing you 9 mistakes that you need to avoid making when you're creating workshops and training programs. Are you ready? Buckle up, it's going to be fast. Number 1 is not engaging with your stakeholders. So that's making some assumptions about what people might really want and need across the business. And without engaging with your stakeholders, you don't know how they're going to decide whether the workshop has been a success or not, whether it's added value. So it's key to try and understand where have the requests across the business been coming from? What is it that they want to see differently? Which brings me on to mistake number 2, which is not engaging with your participants. Your stakeholders might have one clear idea about what they want and need and what they expect. Your participants might have another. So if there's a bit of a disconnect when you're running your workshop, you might end up satisfying your stakeholders and not the participants. And if the participants aren't satisfied, it's unlikely that they're going to do anything differently afterwards. And if they're not going to make any changes, why are you running the workshop in the first place? Which brings me on to mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is where you focus all of your attention on the content of the workshop and not on the change. And this might mean, let's take a topic like time management. You focus all your attention on what are the models and the activities that I could run on the workshop, and you don't think about how to help people to apply it in practice or in the real world afterwards, which means that after your amazing workshop has been run, people are unlikely to do anything different, which means that your stakeholders are unlikely to see the changes that they want and need. So mistake number 4, rubbish slides. I've seen them, you've seen them, perhaps you've even used them. So what's your definition of rubbish? Because, it could be quite subjective. I mean rubbish when they are packed full of words, when there's loads of text on there, or there's just loads of boring bullets and everything looks exactly the same. So you've got a couple of options here. You can either liven them up a bit, have more visuals, maybe GIFs, add a video on there. But whatever you do, ban the long, 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 long list of bullets. And if you can't or you don't want to, maybe ditch the slides altogether. Try going slide free. It is liberating. Okay, so on to tip number 5, and that's obsessing over getting it perfect. Let's aim for good enough. And what I mean by this is not an excuse for some half-assed attempt. What I mean, when you're together with your participants, it's likely that what you're delivering, you might need to tailor it and adapt it according to what they need right at that moment. So let's imagine you're running a workshop on management development. And let's imagine that, for argument's sake, you've got a particular model or tool that you're going to be using, and then somebody asks a question which could take you off in a different direction. Now, if you've spent all of your time obsessing about getting everything perfect, it doesn't leave you that flexibility when you're actually in the workshop, hearing from people firsthand, to go off in a different tangent and explore a little bit more. So instead, maybe brush up on your skills on facilitating, developing great conversations. They're probably going to stand you in much better stead than getting an absolutely perfectly written workshop, which then dies on its arse in reality. Okay, so this now brings me on to tip number 6, because you want some conversations. You want people to engage with what you're saying. Please, please, please do not try and pack too much in. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making, usually because they're trying to add value. They're wanting to satisfy everything that the stakeholder wants. Maybe it's more important to manage the stakeholder expectations about what you can realistically fit into one workshop or one program. You try and pack too much in, and what happens? Nothing goes in, nothing sticks. You leave with participants who are overwhelmed, they don't know where to start, they don't know what to put into practice first. Tip number 7. 7 is about avoiding the info dumping. So what I mean by this is sometimes we are cursed with knowledge. We know way more than the average person about a particular topic or subject that we might be delivering a workshop on. Now, here's the thing, the more that we know, the more that we might assume other people know, and the more complex we try and make it. So exactly the same as with the point before, you don't want to overwhelm people. You want to really understand where they're coming from, what their level of current experience or knowledge is, and tailor it accordingly. So what we're not talking about is dumping all of your expertise onto somebody and hoping that some of it sticks. So point number 8, how you follow up, because often a mistake people are making is no follow-up whatsoever. They think the workshop is it, and I call that one and done. It doesn't work. So if you're only fixated on the workshop or the training program and not thinking about afterwards, then what tends to happen is you're going back to the earlier mistake number 3, and you're only focusing on the content, you're not focusing on the change. So if we want behavioral change to stick or mindset shifts to happen, we need to give people a little bit more ongoing support. And this means things like encouraging them after the workshop. So check in with them, find out what is it that they're winning at, what's going really, really well. And also check in and find out what are their barriers, what are their challenges, and then maybe send out nudges and reminders, things that help to keep them on track. There is no way, whether your workshop is 1 hour, 2 hours, half a day, or all day, there is no way that people are going to remember absolutely everything that you cover. So by following up and making sure that you're drip feeding reminders, sharing their successes, helping them overcome any barriers and challenges, you are much more likely to get the behavior change. And when you get the behavior change, you're much more likely to see success for your participants, which is a brilliant, and you're much more likely to satisfy the stakeholders. And finally, tip number 9. The biggest mistake that I see people get into real trouble with, into legal hot water, is when they use IP or copyright that does not belong to them. So here's the thing, just because you've read something brilliant in a book, or just because you've seen an incredible video that brings to life a specific model or a tool or technique, it does not mean that you can use it in your workshop or your training program. So first of all, do your research. Check out, is the model or tool or theory or activity or whatever that you want to include, is it copyrighted? Number 2, actually drop a line to the person who created it, whether it's the author or the content creator, and ask permission to use their work in your workshop. Tip number 3, ideas aren't copyrighted, how they are expressed is copyrighted. So let's take a quick example. A very famous book that's being talked about a lot at the moment is Kim Scott's Radical Candor. And so her principle of radical candor, if you boil it down, it just means giving feedback in a way that's both kind and clear. So the words kind and clear are not copyrighted, but her radical candor framework and the exact words that she uses absolutely are. So you can interpret what's written and just deliver it in a different way. So those are my 9 top tips. Please take the time, either revisit them, rewatch them, but just implement them, because they will absolutely change the way that you are delivering. And just a quick note on one of the points that I made about not info dumping. There is a world of difference between a webinar and a workshop or training program. So a webinar is much more one-way information. A workshop, you really need people to get interactive, to engage. You want them to discuss and build, create, explore. All of those things are much more likely that people are going to take the information on board, apply it to their own situation, and put it into practice afterwards. So there you go. I suppose that's freebie tip number 10. And I hope you got some value out of it. Take care.